when you work for a long time on a subject like migration, at some point you somehow uh, start, empathizing, or feeling as migrants do a little bit too much. So you get too attached to some to subjects or to some stories, and sometimes you lose the big picture. I think that's one of the challenges. um, I think it's either another big question is if you're a freelancer, then you need funding, and it's very hard for a freelancer like me to get proper funding to do his projects. And if you work for a big media or for a, yeah, whatever media, then you are somehow forced to follow certain type of stories or to show some kind of drama in your stories, and then you're not 100% free. um, so yeah, I think those are the two main challenges. And also I think another big challenge is to that after sometimes that you're working with migrants that are telling you, migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, that are telling you about awful stories and terrible situation and horrible backgrounds, then you somehow reach a certain, I don't know, saturation. You can't stand more suffering anymore. I think that is also a big part of the problem, especially if you're covering that kind of subject for a long time, as I did, as in my case.
Migration was on the front page of the European media for years now. Do you find that there is real interest to this subject, or there is already a fatigue in the public with these stories?
I think there is a fatigue in the media about this story. We had, as you said, until 2014, migration was only spotly in the news, and since the beginning of the migrants crisis in 2014 or 15, then it has become like the big story for everyone. And I found myself covering some aspects of story together with other hundreds of journalists sometimes. And then it becomes the debate, and the images shown on the media became a little bit overwhelming, I think, during this period. And especially in some countries. I don't know about every country in Europe. In my case, I'm from Italy, and I live in Spain, and I can definitely tell that in Italy it was the story or the subject of the years. Everybody was talking about this, and also in Spain it has been greatly in the news. Um, if we are coming to a turning point right now, I think probably the numbers of migrants coming are changing. We are not talking about those same big numbers that we had a couple of years ago. And also, I think, as you said, the public is a little bit, overwhelmed or saturated by all these kind of images, and and I think that's also why some uh, awards or grants or the industry, photography or video industry rewards are now shifting to other subjects that are maybe related to migration but not with the same focus. If I don't know, I have a personal example. I recently, like last week, I was awarded the first prize in photojournalism in Spain, and the winning photo was a photo of a refugee in Italy, but it was a posed portrait inside a tent, and she was pregnant. So I started, because then the second and third place were more, seen pictures of migration, like borders and those kind of things. So I think also in the industry, a process of renovation on the subject is in place, and they prefer to reward a picture which is about integration in Italy or struggling for a better life in Europe or those kind of related subjects.
There have been a lot of talk that journalism should be fact-based, related with in-depth knowledge on the subject. Do you think that there is more stories to tell for migrants that are coming or that are wishing to come that have not been told for these 4 or 5 years that immigration was one of the main subject for the media in Europe?
I don't know. I mean, I think we definitely overlooked some aspects. I'm talking about journalists in general. We definitely overlooked some aspects, especially, and I think we're still overlooking many related subjects. I mean, how many stories have we seen about the background or the reasons that are forcing people to leave? Of course, we've all seen the images of the bombings in Syria, and I think the public opinion was lean to or was more open to Syrian refugees because they've seen the images of the war in Syria. But then we never saw images of I don't know, poor villages in Accra or in Ghana or in Nigeria or West Africa, where like a very big portion of the migrants that are coming, especially to Italy, are coming from. We don't know. I mean, it was not on the media. And
Do you think that the public distinguish migrants from refugees?
I think there's a biased discussion there. A distinction at some point must be made because some legal aspects force authorities to do a distinction there, but and at the end, who can tell if fleeing for persecution or war it's worse than being starving at home? I mean, I think they both deserve a better life and a better future. So I think in that sense, the debate should be more on top. I mean, behind that. I mean, why don't we talk about the policies of asylum? Why don't we talk about reforming the asylum laws in European countries?
Because people often think this is too complicated or too boring to discuss.
Of course, no. I'm not saying that you should. I mean, I think that subject of changing laws should be in the media. I think that. But I agree with you that it could be boring for the average public. But still, I mean, the debate should be there, and media should be, I think, in my opinion, should be a little bit pushing for a certain type of debate. And it's not happening right now. But on the same, I don't know, for this same reason, I think also politicians should take initiative and start reforming those laws and thinking about those laws and thinking about the Dublin Agreement and thinking about collaboration between European countries. And those are still things that are, everybody is talking about it, but nobody is doing anything about it.
And how do you perceive the role of the media in shaping the debate? Who should lead, the decision makers or the media?
Well, I think decision makers are well paid to do their job, and they should. So I think the first move should come from them, I think. But then I also think that in medias and especially big medias, there is a big lack of information on certain topics related to migration, and I don't know if it's only about the market that people won't buy that. I don't know, or if it's because it's easier to focus on other stories that are more dramatic and maybe easier to report about. I don't know. I don't have that answer. Personally, as a freelancer, as someone that is lucky enough to be able to choose his own stories and his own subjects, I I would definitely now shift my attention to other topics that are related to migration.
What makes a piece on migration a winning one?
Well, I think uh, there are two sorts of answers here. One is about the format, I think, and when I work, I always try to differentiate the formats that I use. So I consider myself a photographer, but when I am in the field working, I also always shoot some video. I always do interviews. I record sound. I take photographs. So I try to differentiate. I'm also starting to use 360-degree recording. I'm trying to differentiate the formats that I use, and I think that is a direction that if a journalist wants to succeed right now needs to do, especially if you're a freelancer. I mean, and then I don't know. I was not part of the jury, of course, and I don't know what's the reason behind it. But if I have to find one about the work that I've done, leaving aside the format, I think it's about trying to tell a story where the public, where the audience is somehow, I don't want to say forced, but encouraged to feel some empathy towards the subjects. So if I take a portrait of a refugee or a migrant on a rescue ship, then I always try to have a little bit of his story. And if I don't know, of course, I decided to leave aside many pictures that were about people in poor conditions somewhere laying in the ground, because I think it's, I don't know, I prefer to show a more dignified vision of the subjects. So I think it's about empathy. It's about telling the human story behind the drama, or the human story beside the drama. I don't know.
And what do you think about the dramatization of stories? Do you need to dramatize in order to be heard, to be noticed, or you should report exactly what you see?
Well, you never report exactly what you see. I mean, or you can try to do that, but there's never an objective reporting. Everyone has his own vision, and that vision is can be seen in the pieces you produce. But there is a need for drama. I think there is one, and it comes from the media. So if you want to publish photographs on a newspaper or a magazine, and you've been in a rescue ship, then you present 100 pictures, and they would choose those 20 where you can see people in the boats, struggling to get a life jacket. So that's the images that really sell. But I mean, it's okay. You have those pictures. The media wants those pictures. You can sell those pictures and then keep the more personal work for other purposes, or for putting together a video piece, or to put together a more personal piece, so that when someone saws your pictures in a magazine and goes to your website, then in your website they can find a more in-depth piece. They can see video, they can hear interviews, they can see a 360 video or virtual reality. I don't know. I think those dramatic images that are the ones that sell, that is for sure, then can bring people to maybe explore other different contents if they're interested to, of course. And if you have an interested audience coming to your website, that's a good thing.